Ever planted kale only to watch it turn bitter, bolt too quickly, or get completely devoured by pests before you could harvest a single leaf? You are not alone. Kale is one of the most rewarding greens you can grow. But there are a few things you need to get right if you want a huge harvest, especially when you are growing it in containers. In this video, I am going to walk you through the complete process of growing kale in pots from start to finish, covering everything from choosing the right container and soil mix all the way through harvesting techniques that keep your plants producing for months. Plus, stick around to the end where I'm going to show you how to turn your homegrown kale into the crispiest, most addictive kale chips you have ever tasted. Let us get into it. Kale is one of those crops that just makes sense for container gardening. It is incredibly productive. It handles cool weather like a champ. And once you understand a few key principles, you can be harvesting fresh leaves for salads, smoothies, and cooking for months on end. The great news is that growing kale in containers is actually easier than growing it in the ground in a lot of ways because you have complete control over the soil, the drainage, and you can move those pots around to chase the ideal conditions. So let us start by talking about which varieties work best in containers and why that matters. When you are growing kale in containers, variety selection makes a real difference. Now you can technically grow any kale variety in a pot, but some are going to perform a whole lot better than others. Dwarf varieties like dwarf blue curled or dwarf Siberian are specifically bred to stay compact, usually topping out around 12 to 18 inches tall. That makes them perfect for containers because you are not dealing with a massive plant that gets top-heavy and flops over. Lacinato Kale, sometimes called dinosaur kale or Tuscan kale, is another fantastic choice. It has those gorgeous dark blue-green leaves with the bumpy texture, and it tends to grow more upright rather than spreading out wide. Red Russian is one of my personal favorites for pots because the leaves are tender, the flavor is mild and sweet, and it stays relatively compact. A pot that is too small, and then they wonder why their kale looks stunted and stressed. For kale, you want a container that is at least 12 inches deep and 12 inches wide for a single plant. All right, let us get into soil mix and planting, because this is where we really set ourselves up for success. Kale is a heavy feeder, which means it wants nutrient-rich soil to produce all those beautiful leaves. When you are growing in containers, you need a high-quality potting mix, not garden soil. Garden soil is too dense. It compacts in containers, and it does not drain well. What I like to do is start with a good organic potting mix and then amend it with about 20% compost. That gives you the loose, well-draining structure kale roots love, plus a nice boost of organic matter and nutrients right from the start. You can also mix in a slow-release granular fertilizer at planting time. Something balanced, like a 444 or a 555, works great. Just follow the package directions for container application rates. When you are planting your kale, whether you are starting from seed or transplanting seedlings, here is what you need to know. If you are direct sowing seeds, plant them about half an inch deep and keep the soil consistently moist until they germinate, which usually takes 7 to 14 days depending on soil temperature. Swing from bone dry to soaking wet stresses the plant and can cause the leaves to become tough and bitter. For feeding, remember that kale is a leafy green, which means it loves nitrogen. After your initial slow-release fertilizer starts to taper off, usually around 4 to 6 weeks after planting, start giving your kale a liquid fertilizer every 2 weeks. Fish emulsion, or a liquid kelp fertilizer, works beautifully. You will notice the leaves get larger and darker green when your feeding schedule is dialed in. Just be careful not to overdo it late in the season if you are heading into a frost, because too much nitrogen can make the plant more susceptible to cold damage. By the way, if you are finding this helpful, make sure to subscribe so you do not miss future videos. All right, let us keep going. Now here is the part that really makes container kale worth the effort, and that is harvest. First, aphids. These tiny little pests love kale, and you will usually find them clustered on the undersides of leaves or right in the growing tip. If you catch them early, a strong spray of water from the hose can knock them off. For heavier infestations, an insecticidal soap or neem oil spray works well. Apply it in the evening so it does not burn the leaves in direct sun, and make sure you coat the undersides where the aphids hide. I check my plants at least once a week, and catching aphids early makes all the difference. Second, cabbage worms and loopers. These are the green caterpillars that chew holes in your leaves. They come from white butterflies you will see fluttering around your garden. The easiest organic solution is Bacillus thuringiensis, also called BT. It is a natural bacteria that targets caterpillars, but is safe for everything else. Spray it on your leaves every week or two during peak butterfly season. You can also cover your containers with a lightweight floating row cover to keep the butterflies from laying eggs in the first place. Third, bolting. If your kale suddenly sends up a tall flower stalk from the center, it has bolted. This usually happens when temperatures get too warm for too long, or when the plant experiences stress from inconsistent watering. Once kale bolts, the leaves become bitter and tough, and there is no reversing it. Your best bet is prevention. Keep the soil consistently moist. Provide afternoon shade in hot weather, and choose bolt-resistant varieties if you are growing through summer. If a plant does bolt, go ahead and pull it and start fresh with a new seedling. Fourth, yellowing lower leaves. If the oldest leaves at the bottom of the plant start turning yellow while the rest looks healthy, that is usually just the plant redirecting energy to new growth. You can snap those off and compost them. But if the yellowing is widespread or affecting newer leaves, you are likely dealing with a nitrogen deficiency. Give the plant a good feeding with a nitrogen-rich liquid fertilizer, and you should see improvement within a week or two. Fifth, powdery mildew. This shows up as a white powdery coating on the leaves, usually when humidity is high and air circulation is poor. Space your plants properly, avoid watering the foliage, and if you see it starting, spray with a solution of 1 tablespoon baking soda mixed into a gallon of water with a few drops of dish. Soap. That usually knocks it back. The good news is if you follow the steps we have covered, matching the right variety to your container, using quality soil, watering consistently and feeding regularly, you should be able to avoid most of these issues entirely. Now for that bonus tip I promised you at the beginning. Once you have got all this beautiful homegrown kale coming out of your containers, let me show you how to turn it into the crispiest, most flavorful kale chips you have ever had. These are so much better than anything you can buy at the store, and they are ridiculously easy to make. Start by harvesting a big bunch of kale leaves, maybe 8 to 10 large leaves. Wash them well and dry them completely. And I mean completely. This is the #1 secret to crispy kale chips. If there is any moisture left on the leaves, they will steam instead of crisp, and you will end up with soggy, chewy chips. I like to use a salad spinner and then lay them out on a clean kitchen towel for a few minutes to make sure they are bone dry. Next, tear the leaves into chip-sized pieces, about 2 to 3 inches across. Remove the thick center stem because it never gets crispy and just stays tough. Toss the pieces in a bowl with about 1 tablespoon of olive oil for every 4 cups of kale. Use your hands to massage the oil into every bit of the leaves. You want each piece lightly coated but not dripping. Now for seasoning. You can keep it simple with just a pinch of sea salt or get creative. I love a little garlic powder and a squeeze of lemon juice. Nutritional yeast gives them an almost cheesy flavor that is fantastic. Spread the pieces in a single layer on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. Do not overlap them, or they will not crisp evenly. Bake at 275 degrees Fahrenheit for about 20 to 25 minutes, checking them around the 15-minute mark. You want them crispy, but not brown. They will crisp up a little more as they cool, so pull them out when they are just barely done. Let them cool for 5 minutes and then try not to eat the whole batch in one sitting. I have never succeeded at that part myself. Store any leftovers in an airtight container and they will stay crispy for 2 to 3 days. Though honestly, they rarely last that long around my house. So that is everything you need to know to grow incredible kale in containers and turn it into one of my favorite snacks. From choosing the right variety and container, to soil mix and planting, placement and watering, all the way through that cut. And if you have any questions, tips of your own, or a favorite way you like to use your homegrown kale, drop them in the comments below. I love hearing from you. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, good luck in the garden and keep on growing.